This is Brianna Cespedes, also known as DJ Cubanita, welcoming you to the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club show with your host, David Hernandez. Whether it's pupusas or tostadas, menudo or pozole, you have found one of the most recognized and respected voices representing the conservative Hispanic community in Los Angeles. So if you're an American of Hispanic descent and believe in family, faith, and opportunity, you just may be a Republican after all. Listen in and you decide, are you one of us? Remember, brown is the new red, Republican red. So here he is, the man from Land of Lincoln, Lincoln Heights, David Hernandez.
And here we are. It's Saturday night, and it is going to be a very fast-paced evening because this is our last, for now, 2-hour show. Beginning next week, we're going to be on from 9 to 10 p.m. every Saturday night, and we're going to continue to, talk about heating up with the election season coming. But before we get into the current election, so much has been going on in the news. And I don't know about you, but when we look at the LA City Council, we had people that are either coming out of jail, getting ready to go to jail, getting ready to, and regardless of party, I think at least 30% of the LA City Council has been removed from office by either the FBI or the DA or the feds, whoever. But, the verdict came down and the sentencing came down, and our friend Jose Huizar got sentenced to 13 years in prison. Now, I don't know about you, but I've looked at all of the scandals that have gone on with the county, with the different department heads, the different city council members. That kind of seems excessive. So, and Jose, when he started out, he was just, a young poor kid. People took him under his wing, and, the system really led him astray. And, I'm not saying that he was not culpable, but the fact is that just seems a little excessive. And so we'll see what happens. So he was up at bat. So up in the batters, up next is Kern Price. So let's see what happens to Kern. I think Mark Ridley Thomas. I think he at least made it to first or second base. So we don't know where he's going to end up. And we're still waiting. We know that LAPD Chief Michael Moore is going to be leaving us at the end of February, and there's a lot of discussion as to who's going to replace him. We have our choice, and we won't give that out tonight, but we have somebody that we've been working with for a number of years, and that voice in the background is Benny Bernal. Hey, Benny, welcome.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. It's always an honor to be here, especially when I'm here with David, and we have some great guests lined up for you tonight. It's going to be exciting. But yeah, David, thank you for the opportunity once again. It's always a joy.
All right. And so the big question, anybody with brown pigmentation that comes in the studio, they have to be asked, menudo or pozole?
Pozole for me.
Oh, no, come on.
I'm a pozole guy.
You're a pozole guy. Okay.
Yeah. Well, my mother being from Michoacan, it's a certain flavor that they get from the pozole. It's different than a lot of other parts of Mexico. So that pozole gets me. I love menudo as well, too, but I prefer the pozole.
Now, aside from what your mother used to make, where was the best restaurant that you would get pozole at?
Well, there's one in Simi Valley. It's called Tacos, El Taco Mexico. It's in Simi Valley in Los Angeles, and it's almost like 95% flavor of my mother's. It is excellent if you like it spicy.
And I don't like it spicy. Yeah. I'm not Catholic. Yeah. I don't like hot salsa. And I'm not a Democrat, so there's 3 strikes right there, right? That's why I've been called every name from Tio Tomas to Coconut to Bandito.
We've heard it all
these different things. But there's a lot going on and a lot of serious stuff going on.
Absolutely.
And so one of the races that people will be starting to get their ballots in just 2 weeks is going to be for the Los Angeles County District Attorney, and that is a big deal. I mean, we see almost every day the result of having the current district attorney in there, and also the failed attempt to recall him, which was really a disappointment
and questionable.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The people that were involved
made some mistakes.
The recall of the governor got on the ballot with $1 million. The people recalling Gascon, I think, had about $12 million.
Wow.
And so, one thing, and the money in politics, people may be able to raise a lot of money, but what they spent on consultants doesn't necessarily return votes. And that's
true.
Also part of the story of with our next guest. And we want to welcome in studio, Deborah Archuleta.
Judge.
Let me back that up. Your Honor, Judge Deborah Archuleta. Welcome, Judge.
Well, thank you. Court is in session. I'm happy to be here tonight.
All right,
so
boom,
thank
boom,
you.
boom. All right, bailiff, secure
Lock these gentlemen up, please.
This is that. Well, and we have plenty of time, so we don't have to rush. And this isn't a gotcha type of a show. We really want to give the listeners an opportunity to know who you are. So, first of all, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Placentia, across the border of Orange County in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And my dad was the first Spanish-speaking probation officer in the county of Orange. Mm-hmm. And so he showed up in the late 50s in Orange County. I used to ride my bike through the orange groves and run the streets of Orange County. And so I grew up in Placentia. I've never ventured very far. Mm-hmm. I've always I'm very close to my father. He's 95 years old. He's a Korean War vet. And he's still alive, praise God. And so I could never really live very far from my father. So I grew up in Orange County. I went to a school there, and I went to college and law school there. And then I moved across the behind the orange curtain, out from behind the orange curtain, and moved to L.A. County, where I started my professional career.
Now, when you first started your education, did you go to community college?
I sure did. It started when I was 19. I was the victim of domestic violence, and I had a boyfriend who threw me into a wall, and I didn't realize it. I was going to college then, but when I was 21, I had to have brain surgery because I had a blood clot on the brain. Mm-hmm. So when I got through that, I made a pact to finally do what I needed to do, and that was to go work on behalf of other victims of serious and violent crimes, including domestic violence. So I was going to Fullerton College at the time, and I had my surgery on May 27th, 1980. And by August, I was working as a legal secretary in a law office in Fullerton, going to Fullerton College. And then from there, I continued working as a legal secretary, and I went to UC Irvine. I got a degree in economics, but I cannot balance my checkbook to this day.
Your story, that is such an inspiration for our listeners, being that you started at a community college and now you're a judge. The people who are listening today, especially the younger generation, the Gen Z that we're trying to kind of grab their attention, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, because that's going to carry a lot of weight. Go ahead.
Well, my grandparents were born in New Mexico, and my grandmother had a third grade education and my grandfather had a sixth grade education. My immigrant story is a little bit different. They pretty much only spoke Spanish, and my grandmother was a maid. And my grandfather was a laborer. He picked fruit. He was a truant officer. He was a tailor. He was a mason. He did whatever he could to put food on the table. And then there were 4 children. My 3 aunts, all in the 1940s, went to college when Latinas did not go to college. All 3 of my aunts went to college. And then my father, I mentioned previously, served in the Korean War. He earned the Purple Heart. He spent a month in a foxhole in Korea in the coldest winter in 1951. When he got out of the service, he went to San Jose State and got his degree and became, like I said, the first Spanish-speaking probation officer in Orange County. So we have a legacy of hard work and education, and I believe that I'm the product of that. In fact, sitting on the bench in my courtroom, I always kept a sponge on my desk and my bench to remind me of who my grandparents were and where I came from. So that's kind of my story.
Now, before you were elected, and that's really impressive, because I know in L.A. County how hard it is to be elected, what it takes to be elected to be a judge. But you went to work at the district attorney's office?
In 1989, when I was a law clerk, still going to school, I became a law clerk. I worked for 2 years on some very serious and high-profile cases, including the Hernandez case, as a matter of fact. And then in 1991, I took the bar the first time and passed it. and I started my illustrious 26-year career as a prosecutor all over Los Angeles County. So I enjoyed my time in the district attorney's office. It's very important work, working on behalf of the victims of the county of Los Angeles.
Now, you were at the district attorney's office under was Robert Filibosian there?
Oh my goodness, no, not quite. I'm not that old.
Okay.
I started under Ira Reiner.
Okay, Ira Reiner. Okay.
Okay, and then I left when Jackie Lacey was the DA, and I ran for judge in 2016. And luckily, I didn't have to work for the current boss because I don't think he and I would have gotten along very well.
Well, when you ran for judge, because a lot of people don't realize, I mean, that you have some judges that are appointed.
Yes.
And then you have others that are elected.
Correct.
And, I mean, we look at now a candidate statement to be in the ballot for judge is over $120,000 just to be in the sample ballot for the office of judge. But now you ran in 2016 and took office in 2017.
Yes.
And doing some of the research, I mean, you had quite a few competitors, and the competition, especially when you have people with unlimited resources or that are connected to different other organizations. I mean, how were you able to succeed in such a strong field of candidates that were probably many of them well funded?
I outworked everybody else.
There you go.
I'm a worker bee. Look, I've always been a working mom with 2 kids, and I'm just used to wearing a lot of hats and juggling a lot of balls. And I say this with all humility, but I outworked all the other candidates in the race, which was why ultimately I was so successful in the November election. And honestly, it was a privilege to be voted in by the residents, the people of LA County,
Amen.
and I hope to achieve that again here coming forward out of March 5th in the primary when I'm running for DA against George Gascon. To me, I wanted to be the people's judge, and I want to be the people's DA moving forward, and that's why it's gratifying to be elected. I am the only candidate in this race other than George Gascon who has won a county-wide election previously. And that experience has been very helpful in this race because this is a very different race. It's more high profile. It's more political in certain ways. Mm-hmm. But that experience of going through a previous county-wide election has been very beneficial to enduring the pitfalls, if you will, of running for this office. This is a very high-profile race. And I actually met with Supervisor Barger about 3 weeks ago in her office, and she said that this is the most important race in LA County facing the voters this election cycle. And this spoken by a woman who's in her own re-election race. But that's how important and significant she feels that the district attorney's race is.
Oh, yes.
Well, in that race, when you were first elected in the general, you got over 1,068,000 votes. Because it's all of LA County voted for you for judge, right? It wasn't just people that were in a specific district or area.
No, it was a county-wide election, and I covered a lot of territory and terrain like I'm trying to do now for this race. And the message that I had then running for judge and the message that I'm putting out there now is resonating with voters all across the county.
Now, the district attorney's office, like supervisor, city council, or mayor, is a nonpartisan race.
Correct.
And so anyone can vote for you, regardless of party. And in looking at your platform and the things that you laid out and your priorities, does that distinguish you from a lot of the other candidates?
Well, my platform distinguishes me as well as my experience because between my life experience as being a domestic violence survivor and then being a prosecutor, when you're a prosecutor or if you're a defense attorney, you have a certain worldview and a perspective. But I call it the blinders, But when I left the district attorney's office after a very successful and meaningful career, I had to take off the prosecutorial blinders and put on the black robe of justice. So I had to make sure that I wasn't advocating for any side as a judge, obviously, And I had to make sure that not only were the victims' rights upheld and maintained, but also that the defendant got a fair trial, fair access to justice, and fair proceedings. And that separates me from many of the other candidates in this race, in addition to my platform, is my life experience, not only as a working mom, domestic violence survivor, prosecutor, but as a judge of the Superior Court. I believe that we are viewed, and I'm viewed differently as a candidate because of that.
Now, we hear a lot about how the role of police officers, a lot of there's different policies coming down from the police department or ultimately from the mayor's office or city council, because it's an appointed position, not elected. That they may go and they make certain arrests, but before a case would get to you, it would go through the district attorney's office. And it seems like under Gascon, there were a lot of options that were taken off the table with regards to charges being filed against the individuals committing the crimes. How have you seen that as a problem coming out of Gascon's office?
Well, there's several problems coming out of his office, primarily due to his ideology and his lack of leadership. There are over 14,000 unfiled cases sitting on his desk. He immediately imposed 9 special directives or revoked and put his policies into place the first day he was put into office. And therefore, he feels that he victimizes the criminals and he criminalizes the victims, meaning that he's so concerned about mass incarceration, we now are left with what I call mass victimization. So the victims of these crimes, be it the quality of life misdemeanors or the serious and violent felonies, these victims are not getting their day in court. When I was a prosecutor, I handled over 100 jury trials. George Gascon has never tried a case in his life. When I was in the district attorney's office, I went to parole board hearings. I've personally appeared at approximately 150 parole board hearings in such garden spots as San Quentin, Folsom, Vacaville, Atascadero, Soledad. I would go there on behalf of the victims, the surviving family members if it was a murder, and law enforcement to ensure that the serious and violent felons were not released and got early parole dates. Gascon has never attended those hearings, and he prohibits his deputies from even attending. And lastly, that's why LWOP doesn't mean LWOP anymore. Manson murderers are getting parole dates. There's this early release under Prop 57, especially during COVID. And when you look at the years spent in the courtroom, I've spent 35 years in the courtroom. I don't think George Gascon would know where to stand in the courtroom if he was ever invited inside one.
Well, and what we're hearing now, there's a program, and I'm going to say it's new, but it's not new, where you have individuals that were sentenced to life in prison, that they are being released under the banner of them being elderly. And
I guess I'd be eligible.
Well, except that they may be eligible to be released.
But they're not suitable.
They're from state prison, but they're not even eligible to get the seniors discount at Norms, which is 55, because they're saying that at age 50, someone who was sentenced to life in prison is elderly, and so they have been releasing them for the past 3 years.
Yes, they have. It's called compassionate release. And then with COVID happening, it gave the governor and the Board of Prison Terms more incentive to release these people. Frankly, a lot of these people are living on the streets under tarps and tents on the streets of
absolutely.
Los Angeles.
It's because especially with Prop 47 and Prop 57, when that was passed, I mean, who wouldn't have want clean,
Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act?
Yeah, the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. I mean, that just sounds like something that's really great, and
until it wasn't.
And so, and look who's here. There's Brianna.
Hello.
And so people voted for that.
Right.
And so what they got was it was retroactive. So you had thousands of people released from state prison with no place to live, no place to work, and all of a sudden the homeless population just exploded.
Well, that's part of the homeless population, but that doesn't account for a lot of the homeless population. But.
Well, what really accounts for the homeless population is if you're able to get $800,000 per single unit for a homeless, for a single unit apartment to house the homeless, why would you ever solve the problem? And when we look at the bond measures that have been passed with the $1.2 billion with the city and $1.5 billion for the tax increases with the county, why would you cut off a stream of revenue coming in that's really funding so many different nonprofits here in LA County?
Well, that's an issue that I think is more for the city politicians and not for the district attorney. But I have to agree that in certain ways this problem seems to be incentivized. One of the things that is very apparent to me is that many of the homeless people living on the streets of LA County are not even California residents. We are generous Californian taxpayers, and we allow people to be bussed in from other states to come to our drug treatment programs here in California. Medicaid pays for 90 days of drug treatment programs. So we have busloads of people coming in from the opioid crisis. They come from the Midwest. They come for the 90 days of free treatment. And then thereafter, they're dumped on the streets of L.A. Their families, sadly, they've been, disenfranchised from their families. And there's no way to get these people back to their home states. And so they are also now living on the streets of L.A. County.
Now, we have just been joined by the DJ Cubanita.
Yes, sir. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brianna Cespedes. And how was your drive up?
I was long, an hour 15. I expected it to be an hour, so I apologize about that. But yeah, it's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, just a privilege to be here as always.
Well, this is Judge Deborah Archuleta. And
Court already is in session. We started 15 minutes ago, but we waited for you. I didn't issue a warrant. I did not issue a warrant for your arrest. I held it.
So she is running for Los Angeles County District Attorney.
Okay.
She started working in the district attorney's office when she was 14. And
just about.
Wow, very impressive.
But one of the things I notice about your platform and the things you're talking about is you're actually going after or seeking the causation of the situation of the problems, and you don't hear that from a lot of people. It's like most people just want to dump money. They want to put a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. But as I'm reading, I'm noticing, okay, there's some things you're asking for where we have to get to the root cause.
It's called drug addiction, substance abuse, domestic violence, mental illness that leads to homelessness. And we have to solve these issues and be more effective about it. It's not progressive to allow people to live on the streets. It's inhumane.
Yes.
When I'm elected, I will require that the people that have drug abuse disorders, that are drug addicts, be required to go to treatment. And there will be consequences for failing to participate. Not failing to achieve sobriety, but failing to participate. I've noticed this in the last 35 years that I've spent in the courtrooms and on the streets of L.A., that this is a serious problem. A lot of people are making money off these programs, and I'm not seeing a lot of positive results when I look around the streets and I'm driving around. So that is something that definitely needs to be dealt with more effectively. Prop 47 has decriminalized certain aspects or reduced penalties, but there are still penalties available, and we have to seek vigorous and aggressive misdemeanor prosecutions for these poor people that are addicted to drugs. One of the last assignments I had was at the Edelman Children's Court. I was removing 10 to 15 babies a week at birth from their mothers. These babies were born with methamphetamine and fentanyl in their tiny newborn systems. These babies would have to be given morphine IV drips because they were detoxing. They'd have to be given oxygen support because their lungs were not developed. They'd have to be given IV feeding tubes because they were so premature that they couldn't suckle, they weren't developed, and the mother had drugs in her system. This was happening 10 to 15 times a week. One of the other cases I had was a 9-month-old who ingested fentanyl. And how does a 9-month-old get fentanyl? And why aren't those parents being prosecuted for child endangerment?
Absolutely. Now, Judge, I'm beginning to hear the music. So how can people learn more about you? What is your website?
My website is judgeda4da.com. My father had the foresight of naming me Deborah Archuleta, knowing that someday I would be the first Latina DA
There we go.
in LA
Wow.
County history
There it is.
Dale.
to lead the largest prosecutorial office in the country. It's judgeda4da.com. I look forward to your vote on March the 5th, which also happens to be my birthday.
All right.
Happy
Judge Archuleta, thank you so much for
Yes,
coming in.
yes, what an honor.
We'll be right back with the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club with DJ Cubanita, Brianna Cespedes, Benito Bernal, and a whole slew of other guests. So don't go away. And we're back. Welcome to the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. This is David Hernandez with Brianna Cespedes. Brianna, I'm holding up your open letter to the American people. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is an open letter as just a declaration of military accountability. I represent veterans that were discharged involuntarily for not getting the COVID vaccine, and what comes along with that is a lot of injustices. So I'm advocating with involuntary veterans, and our group actually, we put together this letter that we sent out on New Year's Day, essentially where we were saying we are going to make action to do something within the DoD to create accountability, because our leaders, which we named specifically the leaders that just disobeyed a bunch of policies, and we're saying, look, something needs to happen from this, because if our leaders within the DoD that swear to the Constitution are willing to just bow down when there's pressure from the administration, then we're not actually having people that are fulfilling their oaths. So we are going to be running for Congress. We're going to be supporting candidates that also are going to do this as well. So just that's what we're doing as the military. The DoD needs to change. We're at that point now, because where we are at with the military, there is just a lack of trust within the ranks, and that needs to be changed. So.
Well, you're a big part of that.
Well,
Let
thank
me
you.
tell you, you've opened up a lot of eyes. People are listening. The work that you're doing is amazing. As a candidate for Congress, I give you my word, and you know me, Brianna.
All right, it's
I
on
get
air.
in there.
It's recorded.
I get in there. You are going to be that voice for me.
Thank you,
You will
Benito.
be in D.C. We will be fighting for our veterans, because you know what? God allowed that to happen to you in your life for a reason, because He knew your heart. He knew you wouldn't quit. He knew you'd be willing to stand up and fight. So I got your back 100%.
Well, thank you. And really, that's what we need. We need people that are willing to get into that seat, that are going to actually stick to their word. And I just really appreciate it, because we as the veterans, we're running now. We're going for Congress, and we need candidates just like you. So,
Absolutely. We need candidates who are not just going to go party lines.
Yeah.
Tackle the issue.
Or have it on
Tackle
their
the issue.
website
Or
that are
just
like,
go
we
party.
support veterans.
Yeah, just go party.
Yeah. So really appreciate your support.
There is so much going on. I mean, we have, from a race for the White House to LA City Hall. I mean, we first met our next guest. We were at a candidates forum, and it just seemed like there was a whole slew of who's who was up there on the stage. And our friend Yolanda from Venice, she said, you know what, I want you to meet, our friend, Dr. Diaz. And so we want to, welcome you here tonight. I mean, we're waiting for a call from an LAPD officer, but we'll be talking to him. If we'll take a quick break if he calls in, but I wanted to welcome you here. And boy, you're running in one of the most watched city council races, I think, on the ballot in March.
Definitely, I think it's basically a historical seat. I think everybody watches the CD14 for the past 50 plus years. I was born in 1962. My name is Dr. Nadine Diaz. This is my second run. I ran against Mr. Huizar, Jose Huizar, in 2015, and we all know what happened to him.
Well, he got his sentencing this week.
Yesterday.
And 13 years in prison. And I don't know, and I said this in the first hour. I've been watching and been involved in LA city politics for a long time. I think, and I'm the opposite party of him, and I don't have any close relationship with him, but I think that was excessive. And so somebody was trying to make a point and it had probably had nothing to do with justice or equity or whatever, is that he obviously made some enemies, and either some of the developers involved who were politically connected to other people, they wanted to really go after him. And, he was started off as a poor young kid. He was taken under the wing by somebody from the community, went to school, and like so many, really diverted from the path. Not that he was not culpable for his own behavior, but he didn't start out that way. And I think that's why it's really important that people of character that have values and are able to set priorities like yourself, that are stepping into an arena where we've seen at least a third of the city council members either having to resign for their remarks or taken or sentenced to, whether they were Republican or Democrat, it didn't matter, because it's happened to so many. So here you are, you're willing to step into you're in the arena, looking for a seat on the horseshoe. So that's in City Council District 14. And for those of you that don't know, that's KDL, also known as Kevin DeLeon's seat, that you're running for. Also, there are other people who have been in the media of recent who are also running that race, and that's Wendy Carrillo, who I guess apparently she said that she sneezed and hit a couple of cars, and so there's other people in the race that we got to meet, and there's some. We don't necessarily share the same ideologies, but you could tell that they were sincere in where they're coming from. So tell our listeners a little bit about, where did you grow up? How did you end up here tonight?
Thank you so much, David, and I really appreciate you welcoming me to the show. I was born in Boyle Heights in 1962. I come from a multicultural background. My dad is American of Mexican, Yaqui, and Basque descent. My mom, American, Japanese American, born in Tule Lake, California in 1942 when the U.S. government interned the Japanese American. My parents met at Roosevelt High School, fell in love, graduated in 1958. I was born in 62. I didn't come. I wasn't born with a silver platter. I worked hard. My both sides of the family. My grandfather Diaz came from Mexico in 1913. Married my beautiful grandmother Vasquez, and she became a Diaz, and she's Yaqui in Basque. And so they settled in Boyle Heights. My dad grew up in the projects, and my grandmother Diaz said, "This is enough. I want to build a home for my family. I want my children to get the best education. We want to live in a clean community, make sure that our children get an education, get a job, and give back to the community." Well, my mom put my dad through pharmacy school at USC, graduated in 1968 with a doctor of pharmacology. On my grandmother's deathbed from breast cancer, she said, "This is not enough. I want you to be a physician." So we went to medical school. We spent some time in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I was from the age of 8 till 22. And then at the age of 22, I returned to take care of my grandpa Diaz, who was blind and was having memory problems, dementia. So it was my calling to come back at the age of 22 to take care of my grandfather. Culturally, we take care of we don't put our families in convalescent homes. That's a cultural thing. And so Grandpa Diaz said, "You know what? I want you here. I need you, but I want you to go to school." So my life was school. And from my grandfather, I learned about the community, the politics, because he was a community organizer. He became a citizen at the age of 45, and his passion was to organize people to register to vote, to become part of the process, which I don't really see happening or has been happening for the last several decades with some of our Latino politicians. And that's something that I want to do. We need to have a pathway to citizenship for all people to become part of the process. So long story short, Grandpa mentioned that there were things changing. Politicians weren't listening. You have to be the voice for the community. You have to get your education, and you have to come back and help people, all people.
Yes.
All people. So I did, and went to school, graduated from East LA College, transferred to USC, got my bachelor's in cultural anthropology, got a job in the medical school, been there for 30 years, environmental health, epidemiology, now currently Alzheimer's disease, and to earn my master's degree in 2005, went back to school at the age of 55 to get my doctorate degree because I was bored. I wanted something more to offer. And this all came to fruition because I'm in Alzheimer's disease research, and the reality is, in America, every day in America, 10,000 people turn 65. Every day in America. And it's the fastest growing population. And we do not have the policies or systems in place to take care of our elderly. I'm a geriatric social worker. That's my specialty. I've been in, again, Alzheimer's disease research for the past 17 years at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at USC, which is a free program. Your federal taxes pay us to do research. Across the country, there are 36 universities, and it is a deadly disease. Why did I go back to school? Because we need to build organizations to help our baby boomers live longer, brain health, memory testing, nutrition, socialization. I'm also on the advisory committee for the Los Angeles City Department of Aging and Disability. 25% of the population in Skid Row right now are seniors. We need to work together to create a plan to prevent seniors from becoming homeless. Some of the things that we talk about on the board are isolation, food insecurity, homelessness. Those are the top three. And I'm running because we, in CD14, there has been a lack of transparency, integrity, respect, and service for over 50-plus years.
Well,
I've seen it. I live it, smell it, breathe it.
What communities are in CD14?
Beautiful question. So we have Boyle Heights, El Sereno, Little Tokyo, downtown LA, Skid Row, Eagle Rock, Herman, Hillside Village, Highland Park. A little part of Lincoln Heights now it's now part of our district. It's also part of District 1. Also a little slither of Chinatown, and part of Washington Boulevard, Figueroa, downtown corporate America. We have that as part of CD14. So it's a very diverse district that needs representation that reflects the diversity of the community and the needs of the community. Small businesses, we need to support our small businesses. We need to have a pathway to some form of home ownership, whether it's a townhome, but to empower people. What we have seen, what I have witnessed as a community organizer, is blatant corruption. And that is the reason I have known Mr. Jose Huizar since 1995. He grew up approximately 2 blocks from me. And it just didn't start with Jose.
No.
It goes back.
Oh, yes. East LA politics.
It goes back.
Came back to the valley.
So we need a new day in LA, and I'm concerned about the health of the community. When I say health, I don't mean just physical health, mental health, social health, cultural health, economic health. And we need someone who has the pulse on the community and to represent them with dignity and respect.
Now, when it comes to, when you talk about dignity and respect, and we talk about accountability as well, what is your position with LAPD, with everything that's been going on with them?
That's a huge question. Now, when I'm out on the campaign trail, I hear from small businesses, my business was robbed 4 times already in the last 6 months, and the LAPD didn't come to help me. You know, this is how, and I'm reading and watching the news, and it's happening all over the city. So I think we need to have some checks and balances, and we need to evaluate what is happening. There's crime where I live, I think where we all live. It's not like it used to be. I was asked, should they receive an increase in pay? I was asked. And I think there should be some compensation, but we need officers that are well trained to work with the mentally ill. So there's just a lot of different things that we need to kind of evaluate and assess.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because we've seen a trend totally shift once they went to defund police. You know, once they started the whole defund police, we saw this happening. We see the policies that are being implemented by the mayor and other legislators that pretty much have our officers with they're pretty much handcuffed where they can't do their job. And that's one of the main reasons why they're not showing up to a lot of these incidents is because there's so many felonies. They're so shorthanded. And I think we're going to lose in the next few months probably about another, what they say, a few hundred more officers that are going to be retiring, you know, because of all these policies. So that's kind of the question I wanted to know.
Okay.
Would you be willing to refund police instead of defund police? Do you think we need more funding behind them?
I think there should be some funding allocated for police.
Okay.
Now, you know, Brianna's 25, and there's a lot of vacancies with the city of Los Angeles. And we just saw the news that because there's going to be, I don't know, I think it was about $150 million budget shortfall, and that they're going to start eliminating, a lot of positions that are open. So not only are they not going to fill those positions, they're getting rid of them completely.
I heard.
And so, how do young people that are living in LA, and that want to get involved or go to work for the city, how does that future look for them?
From my my hourglass or crystal ball, it doesn't look very good. And you know what gets me, and it goes back to money. It's always about money. What happened to basic Maslow's theory? What happened to that? People have a right to work, to have a home, a job, services that should be provided. Our taxes pay that. It doesn't look very good out there in terms of what is happening.
And I have a question, actually. For LA City Council, how do you feel that they dealt with specifically the COVID-19 pandemic? What ways did you view that they really messed up, and what ways, when you're in LA City Council, how would you do something in a pandemic sense?
Well, I think as a health professional, I always look at things, prevention, intervention, education. I think it's real important to have resources and information for the public. We can't knee-jerk and say, well, this is the way it should be. I know where I live, many people didn't have the information or out there. Many of them passed away. So again, transparency and having that information in regards to COVID pandemics or any type of disease or trauma that may be in there, we need to be prepared for that.
And that was a great question, because that's one of the reasons why so many officers left the department, and many don't want to come back because of the mandates that are pretty much ignoring their religious exemptions, you know. So that's a big concern for many of the citizens.
Well, I think too, regarding COVID testing and mandatory vaccinations, and I've seen it. I mean, I at USC Keck, when it hit us, we had to isolate, obviously, and work remotely, but it was mandatory to get vaccines. And some of them didn't want to, but they had to have a real strong medical reason why not to. As a social worker in a school setting, sometimes I substitute in the city of LA because I want to see what's going on in the educational system. Teachers, some are vaccinated and some are not. But as long as they have to get tested before they start teaching.
Well, you know, the position of city council member, I mean, that is at one of the most basic things. So when you were talking about public health, especially for seniors, when we look at, and especially in this CD14, when we look at some of the sidewalks and how dangerous they are. The sidewalk, we can talk about a lot of lofty things, but if it comes right down to it, if you're a senior and you're out walking and your sidewalk has been uprooted by tree roots and you fall, you're going to have some life. And when you're in the medical profession, you're going to have some life-changing, if not life-threatening injuries. So how can we ensure that safe sidewalks are part of some type of a program, to help support our seniors? Because there are some that are afraid to go outside for that very reason. They're afraid of being hurt, and so they're isolating. And so sometimes it's not really a very complicated psychological thing. It's like, I don't want to go outside and break my hip and end up in a hospital and die. Mm-hmm. So they used to have a 50-50 program where that the city would pay for 50%, the property owner would pay for 50%. However, the contractor had to be approved by the city, which meant the price went up way high, and a lot of the homeowners couldn't afford it, and eventually the funding ran out anyway. So how can we? Do you have any suggestions with regards to how we can make the sidewalk safer for our seniors?
Well, definitely, I think every city council member should assess the sidewalks, for example. I know I did in my community. I live by the Evergreen Cemetery, the largest non-denominational cemetery in the country. And Richard Alatorre was in office. And my grandparents would put me in the stroller when I was a kid, a little baby, and take me around, because that was their way of recreation, walking, exercise. Well, over the years, the sidewalk was buckling, deteriorating, and I saw seniors falling. I saw children falling. And I went to Richard Alatorre, and I said, Richard, you need to fix this. We don't have any money. I mean, what do you mean you don't have any money? We don't have any money. It's been like this for years. You're going to get sued. Again, we need to get the middleman out of it, the contractor out of it. That's basically raising the cost in terms of sidewalk repair. But again, assess and evaluate the sidewalks, the infrastructure, the environment, what is happening. I don't want my staff in the office. I want them outside surveying the district and seeing what is happening in every single district. I want them in not in the office, but maybe in some type of mobile unit, okay, that services all different types of target populations, whether it's the families or the seniors. And again, have meetings, community meetings where people can go and address the situation. Being a geriatric social worker, again, I see all different multi-generational ages, intergenerational age groups taking care of their loved ones. That's the way it is today. I mean, it's not like the children grow up, they move out, the parents retire, and everything is the kumbaya. It's not. It's not. The world is changing. We are changing, and we need to support all age groups. But again, right now, the baby boomers and the mature adults are living longer, and our city council is not addressing the needs of this target population. So there's a lot of issues that we need to tackle.
Well, and the local issues like that, the sidewalks, with the theft, the copper theft, the streets are that, and also parking. I get off of here at 10.
Big issue. I
go home. There's no parking on the street that I live, and I usually have to park 2 or 3 blocks away and walk across broken sidewalks and street lights that have had the copper stolen. So it's dark, dangerous, and so some of those issues that are really important, those are local issues. Nadine, how can people find out more about you? How can they contribute to your campaign?
Thank you so much, David. Please reach out to me at www.nadinediaz.com, and that's NADINE, D as in David, IAZ.com, or you can call me, 323-823-1962. And I just want to make one last thing. If we're going to look at the budget of the city, I'm not sure, maybe your viewers know this, but each city council member earns $19,000 per month. $19,000 per month of our tax dollars. We need to expand city council maybe to 20, maybe later on to 25, and let's curtail that salary to maybe a third. I don't need $19,000 per month. We need to give the money back to the people who deserve to live in a better quality of life in CD14.
All right, Dr. Nadine Diaz for LA City Council District 14. Thank you.
One last question. ¿Pozole or menudo?
Los dos.
All right, we'll be right back. And we're back. Look at that Brianna, that first hour went by quick.
Yeah, it did. Always.
Rápido.
Muy rápido. Muy rápido. Well, you know, we had an event last Sunday where we were kind of, you know, giving a thank you to candidates that were working together out there.
Yes, sir.
You know, collecting signatures and getting people qualified for the ballot. And we met a gentleman who turns out has had a relationship with my grandson, with his son. And we asked him to come in tonight because he is running for one of those offices where people say, well, we never know who to vote for judge. Well, you're going to hear about who to vote for judge. How about that?
That's right.
See, ask and answered. And so we want to welcome in studio Christopher. Chris or Christopher? What would you prefer?
Doesn't matter. My mother calls me both.
Okay. All right. So, Chris, you know, welcome to the Salem Network, the AM 870, The Answer, the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club, and we're really happy to have you with us here tonight.
Well, I'm happy to be here. A
little bit closer to the mic.
Okay.
There you go. And now, the office of judge, I mean, that is now that's a countywide race.
Countywide race.
So any registered voter in LA County,
Yes.
whether they're on Catalina or in Pomona,
Yeah.
how about Antelope Valley?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or go wherever, they can vote for you.
Absolutely. All throughout the county.
Now you're running for is it a specific seat, but it's anyone can vote for you regardless of where they live.
That's right. As long as you live in L.A. County, as long as you're a registered voter, you can vote for me. Mm-hmm. There are 8 or 9 judicial seats up for election, and I am running in seat 130.
Now, some people, like we just had someone, our first guest was a judge who was elected in 2016.
Okay.
And so we have some judges that are appointed, and we have some others that have to run for office.
Yes.
And we know that running for office as a judge, if you're going to have a candidate statement in the ballot, I mean, it's like over $100,000.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And so you probably won't see a candidate statement in the ballot. When people go to vote for judges in this county, in this state, they rarely know anything about the candidates. They have no idea who those people are, what their legal training might be, what their skills might be, what their experience might be. But then you have me this year in 2024, and I have a history.
Yeah. Well, you do have a history, a little bit of a history. I think you were, everyone on the planet knows who you are.
Well, you know, my name is familiar, I'm sure, to a lot of people.
Yep.
But, you know, I have to remind people of who I am, and I have to hope that people will look down the ballot in search of Christopher Darden and vote for Christopher Darden. I can tell you he's a nice guy.
Well, before we get to the part that people know you for, how about the part that people don't know you? Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was actually born in a county hospital in Martinez, California, up in Contra Costa County. I grew up in the projects. I was born in the projects there. Lived in Richmond, California. That's where I went to high school. I'm one of 8 children. By the time my mom was 27 years old, she had 8 kids. My father is a Korean War veteran. He passed away a few years ago from mesothelioma. but I am the middle son of three boys, 5 girls, and I'm the last boy.
Wow, I'm sorry. That's all I got to say.
and I'm also the father of 5 kids.
Wow.
I have a beautiful, drop-dead, gorgeous wife. And, I'm a Christian. Got baptized the week or 2 before I left for college, But, I'm a family man. I'm a girl's dad. I don't think there's any happier time for me than when I'm with my kids.
When I heard you speak at the event the other weekend, we have some connection. So I heard you mention you attend church in Pacoima, California.
That's right, Greater Missionary Baptist Church.
Pastor Chapman was there before, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good
he was
man.
there before. Good man.
Yes.
Good man. And, Pacoima is so rich in history.
Yes, sir.
And it's not just that, when I was in high school up in the Bay Area, listening to, listening to some of the groups, from down here, and they'd be singing about Pacoima. But, Pacoima is an important community.
Yes, sir.
Part of this community. Part of the culture, really.
Well, and you look at Pacoima, you look at like Lakeview Terrace. I mean, there was I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I mean,
Right.
people don't realize. I at 14, I learned to water ski at Hanson Dam.
Yeah.
That's how old I am.
Used to be a fun park.
Yeah.
And because that used to be a big lake, and they had another lake to go fishing. They had, it's the community, especially like in Silmar, in that area there, a lot of equestrians all over.
Yeah, you still see horses out there.
Yeah,
You still see the
absolutely.
horses.
And so the after you went to college, what happened after that?
Okay, well, I went to San Jose State. I'd gotten into UC Berkeley, but I had a sister who had already gone off to Dartmouth College, in the Ivy League. And my parents couldn't help me go to college, and I only had a couple of $100. And my dad was saying to me, well, you can either go to junior college or maybe you ought to join the Army. And neither one of those appealed to me. So I had a couple of $100, and I had a 1960 Dodge Custom 880, a huge 4-door sedan with the rear view mirror down there on the, just by the steering wheel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Push button transmission. So I packed up my clothes, threw it in the old Dodge Custom 880 and drove down to San Jose State.
Yeah, those push button transmissions. R doesn't mean when you're going to turn right. You don't press the R button.
It ain't a turn signal. No.
Don't tell me you had a Brody knob either.
I didn't have a Brody. But, I packed up the car, went down to San Jose State, and I slept in my car a few days. And one day I saw a sign that said that the track team was having a meeting. And I'd run track at Kennedy High School in Richmond, and I was pretty decent. And I went into the meeting. I talked to the coach and showed him some newspaper articles, and he helped me get financial aid.
Awesome.
And so I was able to go to college.
Well,
Awesome.
self-starter. That's awesome.
Well, when you have 8 brothers and sisters, you have to be a self-starter.
Right. Right. You don't want to get lost in the mix.
You don't want to get lost in the mix. And I swear that my mother favored my sisters over the boys. It was always the girls versus the boys.
True.
And, so I went to San Jose State. I finished in 3 years, and I went on to law school at Hastings. It's no longer called Hastings, but it was called Hastings College of the Law, University of California in San Francisco, and I graduated in 1980.
Why did you choose law?
Well, I grew up in a time, in a place, Berkeley was just down the freeway, where there was a lot of friction between the community and the police. I grew up watching militants and the Black Panthers and other groups, and I watched these political trials of the 60s and the 70s and the civil rights marches, and I realized how important lawyers are to different communities, to the people. And I wanted to be a lawyer for the people.
Is that the same reason why you want to be a judge now?
That's exactly the same reason why I want to be a judge now. And that's why I'm here running and not asking the governor. I am here running a campaign. I'm asking the people to put me on the bench. Because when the people put you on the bench, you don't owe anybody.
That's right.
But the people.
That's right.
But the people.
Love that. Love that statement.
And so you went to law school.
Went to law school, got out
Graduated.
1980, passed the bar the first time.
Wow.
And I took a job with the National Labor Relations Board as a labor attorney, doing investigations, holding union elections, and helping in the certification of unions for workers. And, unions and the workers are important to me because one of the ways I got through law school was as a Teamster. I unloaded those big semis at the United Parcel Service.
UPS.
UPS over there in Fremont, from 10 p.m. to 2:30 a.m., during law school. And at 2:30 a.m., I get off work and I drive that old car of mine across the bridge and I'd park it in front of Hastings in downtown San Francisco and sleep till 8 o'clock. So, unions, are important to me.
Yeah, I'm a former union vice president for elected, not appointed, for SEIU Local 99. So that goes back some years. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I've got SEIU 721 endorsing me in the LA County Federation of Labor. So I've got the unions behind me, the working people, the real people, and but I joined the NLRB. I was making $15,700 as a GS9 coming out of law school, right? Big shot kid lawyer making $15,000. And in 1980, I couldn't live on $15,700. I had a daughter back up in Oakland. I left to come to LA to work, and so I worked there for about 4 months, and I'm trying to figure out how I can possibly raise my daughter and pay my rent. And I looked in the legal newspaper one day and I saw an ad. It was for an attorney. It paid $25,800, which was a $10,000 raise for me. And I looked more carefully, and it was for a deputy district attorney. And so in March of 1981, I joined the LA County DA's office.
And how long were you there?
I was in the DA's office for 16 years. And in those 16 years, I was assigned to the hardcore gang division, felony trial divisions, and I finished my the late 80s and early 90s. I finished in what we called the Special Investigations Division, and we investigated officer-involved shootings and police and official misconduct.
Now, who was the DA at that time?
Ira Reiner was the DA when I left that unit. Gil Garcetti became the DA right after that. But I was actually hired by John Vandekamp, if you can remember John Vandekamp, a Democrat. But Vandekamp hired me in 1981.
And so you've had all sorts of different cases.
Oh, yes.
But is there one that sticks out in particular as the...
Not to me. Not to me. There was that little old murder case back in 1995, but and that was a big case, a huge media case. But the most important cases are the little cases, the ones that people don't hear about. Because when you're a sitting judge or even a prosecutor, every day you are doing things and making decisions that are going to impact someone's life in the most dramatic and traumatic kinds of ways. I was sitting one day in my office. This was after I was a DA, and these people came in on a Friday evening, and the janitor came to get me to say, "Hey, there's some people out here that want to see you." And I went to see them, and they told me their daughter had just been convicted of assault with a deadly weapon causing paralysis. And I said, "When?" They said, 2 hours ago. I said, "Okay, how can I help you?" And they said, "The victim's not paralyzed." I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "We have pictures of the victim dancing at a nightclub." As they told me more about the trial, they told me the victim came into court in a wheelchair, was unable to hold a pen, was unable to lift her arm, and testified that it took 4 hours every day for her to even take a bath. So they had $1,000, and as a lawyer, $1,000 in legal land ain't a lot of money. And so I took the $1,000, as a good lawyer does, and I called a friend of mine who was a PI. I told him about the case. came to see me. I gave him the $1,000, and I said, go over there to the victim's house and see what you can find out. And he did. And he sat out there for a couple of hours the next day, and he saw a VW Beetle arrive, and he saw the victim get out of the back seat and pull the seat backwards, close the door, walk around the rear of the car, walk up a flight of stairs, and then a few minutes later the victim walked back out, walked down the stairs, and walked the block to a liquor store and picked up a 40-ounce and walked back. Well, we had this on video. And so that Monday morning, I filed a declaration, the investigator's declaration, and the judge immediately called the prosecutor back into court and ordered the release of that young woman. Nobody hears about that. But that was one of those days where a small case was just so critical and important in the life of this young woman and her family. And so to be involved in something like that, because this young woman was looking at least 5 years in state prison.
How do you find yourself, so you've been in this field for a long time, you've dealt with a lot of large decisions, and now you want to continue and you want to be a judge. How do you deal with the pressure of the decision, knowing what it means?
Well, there really is no pressure unless you allow there to be pressure. And by that, I mean you have to care. You have to care. If you don't care, there's no pressure. If you don't care, you can just run it by the numbers, do it by the book, as some people say. But if you care, making decisions like who gets bail and who doesn't, how much bail they get, who gets released pre-trial and who doesn't, who goes to prison, who doesn't, who gets probation, who doesn't, who's ordered to pay a fine that they can never pay, who's ordered to pay a fine that once they try and pay it, it's going to disrupt the family finances, who gets the driver's license taken away so that they can no longer drive to work, keep a job, and support the family. Big decisions, little decisions, all these decisions matter. And is there pressure? Yeah, there ought to be some pressure. There ought to be some pressure to get it right.
Yes.
To get it right. And, if you know anything about me, you know I care about victims. You know I care about people. And my clients will tell you I care about them, even when I yell at them and curse them out.
Yeah.
But, when you care, there's pressure.
Now, when you were notified that you were going to be on the OJ trial, how did that news come to you? Was that just another case coming to you, or did you feel pressure?
Well, I wasn't the original prosecutor on the OJ case. When I was approached, it was because the lead male prosecutor on the case had a heart event, a health event, and he could not go on. And so when I was approached about it, I wasn't surprised per se, because I had an excellent record in the DA's office, I had an excellent trial record, and I was highly regarded. In fact, I was up for promotion, and I had just been assigned deputy in charge of the Inglewood office. So, my career was on the up, and life was good. And when they came to me with this, I didn't really want to do it, and I went up north and I talked to my daddy about it. And Daddy never went to law school, but he had a law book. He had a law book that he'd gotten back in East Texas when he was growing up, and it was a business law book. And he always said that he was a better lawyer than I was. But he had life experience and wisdom. And I went up there and I talked to the old man, and we kind of decided no, this wouldn't be the thing for me to do. And so my initial decision was no. But after further conversations, I felt I had an obligation to my oath and to my office, and I did it.
How long had the case already been in progress before they brought you on?
Well, the murders are in June in 1994. I think I make my first appearance November 8, 1994. When I come on to the case, the first 12 jurors are already selected. And as I recall, they were in the process of picking alternate jurors.
Okay. And so that was you, and then was it who was did you come on as a lead prosecutor or support?
Well, I came on with Marcia Clark, and various people assigned me various roles, but I was at counsel table throughout the entire trial. Yeah.
And is there anything that in retrospect that you would have done different, or? I mean, knowing how the verdict came out, I mean, is there anything else that you would change if you could?
Well, I wouldn't have shown up in the first place.
You would have taken your daddy's advice. Hell no!
I would have taken my daddy's advice and stayed at home. I mean, I had such a good life and such a perfect career. Didn't have a wife yet. Still looking for a wife back then. But my trajectory was, to the moon, to the moon. And, sometimes I'm a little naive when it comes to the media and publicity. And even though I'd seen the media out there, I hadn't really paid attention to it. But once I said yes and showed up, all of a sudden, every camera in the world was focused on me. And then my whole life picked apart, my trash picked up. People drive up, grab my trash can, empty it into their car, back of their car, and drive off with it, stuff like that. Just a really crazy, crazy time. But, if you swear an oath, if you have a duty, if you assume a duty, you have to fulfill that duty.
And that's why you would be good in the military if you ever did join.
I thought about it.
To take it seriously. What's your view on police brutality since you went through so many of those cases? And the defund the police movement and all that.
Well, the first time I heard defund the police movement, I wasn't a fan of that little ditty. It didn't make sense. I mean, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Right? You're gonna have to call the police. But I understood what people were trying to say. What they were trying to say was that we need to take a look at this, maybe refocus, maybe reshape the department, maybe do more community policing, maybe spread our resources, in a different way in police departments. I understood that, but the idea that we're going to defund the police didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. As for police brutality, this is something I was seeing way back then, way back in the 80s and in the 90s, and we didn't have all of these cell phone cameras, and we didn't have all of the surveillance or police body cameras. But the fact is that it existed. It was a problem. I was in the unit when the Rodney King trial was prosecuted by lawyers in my unit, and I sat with the executive staff as we watched the trial. And I'll tell you, in the Rodney King case, when the jury went out and people were and senior deputy DAs were talking about the ultimate outcome in that case, I said to them, I said, you know what? You'll be lucky to get 2 of them, and you probably won't get that. And they were like, oh, what are you talking about, Dart? What are you talking about? When you lived out there, been out there, and seen some things, you know. So I knew those cops would be found not guilty.
Now, Chris, you've got the ballots are coming out in about 2 weeks. There are going to be people who are voting for about a month. How can people support you? I mean, obviously, you need money to get the message out. Where can they contribute?
Christopher Darden for Judge.com. You can find me on the internet. You can find me on Instagram and on Facebook.
Yeah, we just posted your website on our feed here for the show,
and I appreciate that. If you believe in justice, if you believe in balanced justice, if you believe in equitable justice, if you believe in having judges with real life experience, because let me tell you, I've made a million mistakes in my life. I'm so imperfect that I'm perfect for this job. Okay? I am perfect for this job because I know what it means to make the wrong choice and the wrong decision.
Yes, sir.
And I know about consequences.
Now, is there any limit that someone can contribute?
There's no limit that you can contribute. You don't even have to live in the state of California.
All right.
So please, any help you can give, monetarily, great, thank you, I appreciate it. But if nothing else, vote for me. Ask your friends to vote for me. And if you want me to stop by and talk to your folks at home or on the radio, just go to my website and let me know. I'll be there.
All right.
You got my vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for your
Amen.
vote.
Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. It's David Hernandez, the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. Don't go away. And we're back. Look at that. We're winding down to our last half hour, Benny.
That was quick. It's like, really? I thought it was only 45 minutes that went by.
Yep. Nope. It was going by, and we're going to continue with the same thing because the ballots are coming out of the mail. February 5th? So that's today's the 27th. It's like 2 weeks, and people are going to start voting, and so it seems like the city council is in the news every single day.
I wonder why.
Well, either somebody's going to jail, or there's no money, or we just saw that there's like $150 million of funding that they were counting on that's not coming in. They're going to lay off thousands of. They're calling it. They're going to eliminate all of these vacant positions. Well, there's a reason that they're vacant. It's not that they're not needed. It's the fact that they haven't funded them.
That's right.
When you look at, and that's why I'm really excited to have our guest here, because there's some subjects that no one ever talks about when it comes to city council. And, they talk about public safety, but there's many aspects to public safety. And so for us to have Levon Baranian in, who's running for LA City Council District 4, we're really fortunate. And so, Levon, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Now, so District 4 takes in what? Studio City, Sherman Oaks?
It's actually quite a large district geographically. Mm-hmm. It starts, if we're going to go from west to east, starts in Reseda, takes half of Reseda, mm-hmm. all of Encino, all of Sherman Oaks, half of Studio City, kind of south of Moore Park, and then it mm-hmm. goes over the hills into Hollywood Hills and Los Feliz, parts of Hollywood, Silver Lake. So it's a big sprawling district.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different communities or different needs within different parts of that community.
Absolutely.
But one of the and we have plenty of time, so we can go a little bit about yourself. Sure. Where were you born, and where'd you grow up?
Thank you for asking that. Actually, I was born in Los Angeles. I'm the only real Angelino running in this race. Both of my opponents moved here relatively recently. Mm-hmm. I was born in Hollywood, mm-hmm. and I grew up in Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley. I spent half my time at my grandmother's house because mm-hmm. she took care of me while my parents worked. Mm-hmm. And my parents bought their home in North Hollywood in 1987 when we moved there. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in the Valley. I even stayed here for college. I went to Cal State Northridge, where I studied in the College of Engineering and Computer Science. By profession, I'm a computer scientist and software engineer. So lifelong Angelino. LA's my home. I'm deeply vested in the future of this city. I have 3 children. I want to give them an opportunity to stay in this city. Mm-hmm. My family's been here for about 50, 60 years. This is home. We're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And in order to give our children an opportunity to stay here, we have to solve the multitude of problems that we have in Los Angeles.
Well, and there's a lot, but like Benny, when we're out there talking to people, public safety is a big one, and that could be not only just crime, mm-hmm. but when you look at the dangerous conditions of the sidewalks. Sure. The trees that haven't been trimmed. Mm-hmm. You have many stop signs that have trees overgrown where the visibility is poor.
Yeah.
Street lights with no copper wire.
Yeah, the street light. Yeah, street lights. Is, when you drive down, you like, and it doesn't make any difference if it's Sherman Oaks or if it's Arleta. You may be driving down the street and all of a sudden you notice the street lights are not on. It's like, what's going on?
If they even exist, right? Yeah. In a lot of neighborhoods, especially in the Valley, we don't even have street lights. Mm-hmm. It's kind of neglected, right? Parts of, when you go to Hollywood and whatnot, they're a little bit better lit. Mm-hmm. But where I grew up in North Hollywood and even where I live now in Sherman Oaks, there are entire neighborhoods that we don't even have streetlights. And
Well, there's a lot of them that, and there are some neighborhoods with no sidewalks.
a lot of them.
You look at Fulton over by Valley College. I mean, when it rains on the west side of Fulton between, say, Oxnard and Sherman Way or Victory, there's dirt there.
Oh, yeah.
And so if kids are walking to school or people are walking, in order to not be walking through the water, they got to walk out in the street, which is dangerous.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I'm running is because I think there's a misalignment of priorities in the city when it comes to what our public officials ultimately end up allocating money for. There is no shortage of money in Los Angeles. If you look at the budget, it's huge. And if we look at where that money is being wasted, it ultimately ends up in places where there's zero accountability. Now, one of the things that's affecting all of us is the homelessness problem, right? And I'm an engineer by profession. I work for NASA for 8 years, so I look at data on a daily basis, and
that's good to hear. If you look at the audits, Ron Galpern, who was the last controller, Wendy Gruhl before that, and Laura Chick before that, regardless of political affiliation, I have to give them all credit.
Yes.
That the audits that they did, when you're talking about the homeless, the audit that Ron Galpern did of LASA, when you look to see the complete failure of that organization, you get to see why things are the way they are.
Yeah, and so we're spending $1.2 billion a year on homelessness in Los Angeles, and that's just through the city's budget. And the latest homeless count said there's about 50,000 homeless in Los Angeles.
An increase,
yeah. And that's what's counted, right? I suspect the number's actually higher than that. But if we take those two numbers and do some simple math, it amounts to $24,000 per homeless individual per year. That is a ridiculous amount of money to be spending on this problem and not solving it. I think the real reason we're not solving it is because there's been this homeless industrial complex that's been created, right?
Exactly.
Where there is no incentive to solve it.
No,
I also own small businesses, and I've helped small businesses. And ultimately, if you're selling a product, right, you don't want to solve a problem that's going to ultimately cause somebody not to want that product anymore, right? It's kind of the same problem we have with pharmaceuticals. If you solve homelessness, the money stops.
Yes.
So that's where there's this incentivization, right? So it just doesn't make sense. I'm going to, the first thing I do if elected is I'm going to look closely at that amount of money being spent and make sure that every single dollar given to these sprawling nonprofits is held accountable for, because we can't be spending that amount of money and not making any progress on this issue. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's their intention. It's been their intention going back for many, many years, and here's one of the reasons why is because many of these local politicians, especially in city council, they're supported and financed by developers. And developers who build what? Low-income housing, temporary housing, so on and so forth. So I think that's another issue that we have to address, something that we have to really tackle, because, if these lobbyists and these developers continue to fund these politicians, we're never going to change it. So that has to be a quick question. When it comes to law enforcement, what is your position when it comes to defunding, or do we need to refund police?
I am 100% for funding police. Okay. I have family who are in law enforcement, who are police officers. I believe that we need to pay police officers fair wages. We need to adequately fund our department. This whole nonsense of defunding or abolishing police. My opponent, the incumbent, is a member of the DSA, which, per its policy, actually it doesn't talk about defunding. They talk about abolishing.
They want to get rid of it.
Would you explain what DSA means to our listeners?
The DSA is the Democratic Socialists of America, which in many ways is a Marxist organization.
Yes, sir.
It's not even socialism. I mean, I've studied a lot of political science. Socialism has, if we want to talk about it, the history of it, has some good things. A lot of the policies that we have in the United States that we sometimes take for granted, like a 40-hour work week, for example, or vacation benefits and stuff like that, were kind of socialistic concepts. But they're not socialists. They are militant Marxists.
Yes, sir.
They want to talk about abolishing police. Ultimately, they want to get rid of government altogether, right? And she's a member of this organization, and I can't line up with that organization whatsoever. I'm a pretty moderate person. I never vote along party lines. In some ways, I'm conservative. Some might, think that I'm progressive on some topics. Ultimately, for me, the policy is what matters, and that policy of abolishing police is nonsense. So I would support 100% funding the police department. Now, at the same time, we still need to hold our police accountable, okay? We're minorities. I'm an Armenian American. You guys are Hispanics, Latinos. The LAPD hasn't always treated its minorities fairly in this city. I mean, I grew up in a time where I saw Rodney King. I mean, I was like a teenager when that happened, right? So we can't just give a blank check to our police officers. We have to support them, but at the same time hold them accountable. But without public safety, you lose the element, like the most important thing in society, which is law and order. Without that, you have no society.
Absolutely agree with you 100%. And thank you for standing behind him. We're also part of the LAPD family, so that's good to know.
Now, the rents in Los Angeles are high. I mean, we're not going to dispute that. But there are reasons that rents are high.
Yes, sir.
And one of the reasons that rents are high is because of policies that are implemented by the LA City Council. I know a lot of commercial property owners and a lot of housing providers, mom and pop, with 4, 5, 6 unit apartments, that when the city implemented the exclusive trash franchise for the city of Los Angeles, their stated goal was they wanted to eliminate the amount of recyclables that are inadvertently going into the landfills. LA County Federation of Labor under Maria Elena Durazo, who was also the head of an organization called LANE, Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. Talk about socialist Marxists. So they presented to the city council the idea that if you are able to control who picks up the trash, you'll be able to better control how the recyclables are separated from the trash, and by doing so, be able to eliminate a lot of the items that are going into a landfill. So the city of LA implemented the commercial exclusive franchise for all commercial businesses in Los Angeles. And so with a vote of 11 council members, they eliminated 180 trash companies doing business in Los Angeles and sent out, and they created 11 zones and sent out the call for RFPs from different companies. So the most progressive city council in the United States goes ahead and awards contracts to multinational corporations, while eliminating the mom and pop companies that were around, and in doing so, the
consequences.
And I don't even think they weren't unintended. They were intended. The cost to pick up commercial trash from an apartment building went, if you were lucky, only went up 300, but if it went up to over 1,000%. And so that extra cost just to pick up the trash made its way through to the renters, who are looking at the landlord saying, "Why are you raising my rent?" Meanwhile, the city council has implemented these policies that allow waste management, that allow Athens, that allow Republic Services to just gouge the housing providers as well as commercial offices, whether it was school, the budget for they pick up for LAUSD, they pick up for hospitals, they pick up for restaurants and all of this. And so all of a sudden, the city of Los Angeles is getting 12% of the gross, which means there is no incentive for them to limit the amount of money that these trash companies are charging commercial customers. As a city council member, okay, you're running for District 4, but you're going to be making votes or casting votes that are going to impact the entire city of Los Angeles.
Yep. This is where I differ significantly from the incumbent and the other opponent, who are both kind of establishment Democrat Party candidates. They kind of split the endorsements. FYI, I'm a registered Democrat as well, but I'm a centrist. Like I said, I don't vote along party lines. And
this is a nonpartisan race, anyways.
Yeah, but people are asking me, and I'm not trying to keep it a secret, because it's ultimately public record if they want to find out. But the Democratic Party, when I became a voter, when I was 18 years old, still used to represent the working class in this country. It was about everyday, citizens who were the working class, who had to provide for their families, who worked hard, who didn't have wealth. It was about jobs. It was about job creation. It was about protecting the workers and giving them benefits and all these types of things. Over the last 5, 10, 15 years, we've seen the Democratic Party just kind of fly off the rails and be taken over by completely, foreign kind of extreme agendas, right? The types of things that, are at the forefront of the Democratic Party agenda right now have very little, if anything, to do with workers' rights or effectively treating people fairly, not taking, contracts and giving it to big corporations, taking them away from mom and pops and giving them to big corporations. It's because ultimately the Democratic Party is sold out to these kind of Soros-inspired special interests, right? These George Soros-inspired special interests who are trying to kind of break up the fabric of American society. So I see that at the macro level. I see it at the micro level. At the macro level, we're seeing a lot of stuff at the federal level that is kind of insane, right? The agenda that we're seeing. But on the very, very micro level, that's where it translates to, giving mom and pop landlords a hard time, not supporting local workers, right? A lot of these things that need to be done in the city create jobs. These were all people who ultimately, because of the type of city that Los Angeles that is very diverse, were Latinos, were Armenians, were African Americans. So it's interesting because the Democratic Party also tries to kind of pretend like it's the party that's about minorities, but their policies are actually hurting minorities.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's like, that's what we see on a daily basis. So I agree with you. I think we need to look at that closely and make sure that these contracts are given to Los Angeles companies, that mom and pop businesses are not penalized for not being big enough, and there's a lot of work we have to do there.
Now, in the public safety arena, you have a lot of, in your district, and you have a lot of parks. When people think of park rangers, they sometimes think, well, that must be like the state or federal. But the city of Los Angeles has a park ranger division. And what we have seen and what we've heard from the park rangers is the city has cut their budget so much that they are really at one of their lowest peaks as far as having rangers on staff. And in some of the areas that they are assigned to patrol, because of the and I'm not going to say that it's homeless, it's because of the individuals that are on the street, whether they're mentally ill, whether they're drug addicted, that some of the areas where they're tasked to go into, which are public areas where the public is there, are unsafe. And that they're not able to perform the duties that they're assigned. That when you look at the amount of training that goes into to become a park ranger, when they're done with their training, they're peace officers. So given the environment that is being fostered by the city of Los Angeles, a lot of them get their training and then they go to work for police departments in other states. And so there's a real drain on personnel and a very severe public safety problem at some of these parks and areas that they're assigned to. One of the union members from the park rangers, they've been requesting to be able to carry firearms like police officers. I mean, they're qualified to go into some of these situations, and the city absolutely refuses to allow that. And in many areas, LAPD will not go into the areas that the park rangers are tasked with, because then they're saying, well, we have our limited resources. We're not going to be doing your job. So how can you as a city council member, because in the end, it's the public that's not being served, not just the park ranger.
Yeah. So the issue of public safety affects everything in the city of Los Angeles, including parks. Now, you mentioned the fact that there are homeless encampments in these parks, and these park rangers can't do much about it. The real reason they can't do much about it, even though they are a form of law enforcement, is because there's no prosecution in this city. Everything from the district attorney's office at the county level down to the community prosecutor's office aren't doing anything. It's a no-show job. These people are getting pretty decent salaries, and per the orders given by the district attorney's office and what the corresponding orders are in the city of LA, there's no prosecution. So any type of law enforcement, whether it's a park ranger, whether it's a just a police officer patrol, they can't do anything because their hands are tied. Even if they pick up these people off the streets for crimes that are being committed, or if they're doing something in the park that they shouldn't be doing, they're going to be back on the street almost immediately. And in parks, we have to also so there's an ordinance 4118, for example, in the city of Los Angeles that says that there's certain places where you can't have tents, and one of them, for example, is around schools. Right? Even that's not being enforced. I think as a city council member, I'm going to look for opportunities for expanding that. Look, we're not going to get all tents off the street. Anybody or out of all the parks. Yeah. If anybody promises you that, they're lying to you. But Los Angeles is a big enough city to where there should be certain places where we don't allow tents to just pop up everywhere and to create these public safety issues. I think schools are one of those. I think parks are amongst those places. And ultimately, we need prosecutors and we need a city council that will hold our prosecutors accountable for doing their job, right? Because they're not just accountable to the people that elect them. Los Angeles City Council members have a lot of power and have a lot of leverage in the pressure that they can put on prosecutors in the city.
The equestrian industry in California brings in more money than the equestrian community in Texas.
Wow.
Now, Texas may have more horses, but the amount of income that comes into California because of the equestrian industry is much more, whether it's veterinarians, whether it's boarding, whatever it is. Right now, there is a big push by Councilmember Bob Blumenthal out here in the Valley. Okay. It started off with some individuals, and some of these individuals in the animal rights groups I know because I've worked with them on certain issues. To eliminate certain spurs or different practices used in the equestrian community. And they began by saying this has nothing to do with getting rid of rodeos. But now it has already evolved into we want to get rid of, to eliminate rodeos in the city of Los Angeles. And so they came up with an ordinance. They had the city attorney draft an ordinance to eliminate these practices. And Benny and I were at City Hall with hundreds of chavarias with their horses, speaking up and saying, "Wait a minute, this is our heritage. This is these animals. They are not being mistreated. They are too valuable for us to do anything but to treat them with the utmost care." And so, because come March, I mean, you could be sitting around the horseshoe at LA City Council, and so what would your decision be as far as whether or not to vote to eliminate rodeos and chavarias here in Los Angeles?
I have to admit that I don't know much about that topic, but just from what you described to me. It sounds absurd that a city council facing millions of other problems that aren't being solved in the city has somehow found it a priority to ban rodeos in Los Angeles. Yes. I mean, yeah, like we solved education, we solved public safety, we solved homelessness, we solved infrastructure, and now let's talk about rodeos. I mean, it's ultimately, again, I think it comes down to misaligned interests. These people are out of touch, right? They're pushing agendas because they think that it fits the mold of the extreme part of the Democratic Party that's taken over that party, and this is just nonsense. I will not support banning rodeos. I think that's an important part of Western American culture and Hispanic culture,
and the San Fernando Valley,
and the San Fernando Valley, exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's another thing, by the way. I think some of this is by design. They're trying to eliminate us from our roots, and family values, religion. They're trying to. It's one thing. I mean, this country is based on separation of church and state, right? But there are certain values that we have, these Judeo-Christian values that are part of our heritage as a country. That's another thing they're trying to eliminate, right? And all of this is by design. They're trying to take us away from our roots because that's how you control people.
All right, there's the music. Levon, how can people learn more about you? How can they contribute money?
Oh, thank you. Please visit my website, levonla.com. It's LEVONLA.com. You'll find a lot of information about me, my candidacy, my platform. I think actually we have the website with the most information about my plan. The other candidates have practically nothing on their websites because they think relying on special interests is going to be enough to get elected.
There you got Levon, LA City Council, District 14, and District 4. We had someone out from District 14, but I especially want to send out a shout out to your family.
Thank you,
because they sacrifice a lot. When their family member runs for office. So I just want to let them know that we appreciate their sacrifices, and we don't take that for granted. So there you go. We have our candidate for City Council District 4, and go to our website. He'll be on there as well. And so it's a wrap. We'll see you next Saturday night at our new hour, 9 p.m., with the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. So thank you all that came in. Christopher Darden. We had Dr. Nadine Diaz. Brianna came in as well.
The judge.
The judge. Deborah Archuleta running for district attorney. So we packed it in, and we'll see you next week.
Hasta la
Thank you,
otra
Sal.
semana.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Luan.
Buenas noches.